Hi, I'm Mark Powers. Welcome to This Old House. Adding a pergola above a garage door is a great way to dress up a plain entry point. You can build a structure on a workbench and then screw it to store-bought brackets that you attach to the garage, an easy project to tackle in a weekend. Before you pick up your materials, measure the span of the garage door, including the casing, to determine a length for your rafters. As a rule of thumb, the rafters should extend about a foot past the brackets on each side. For our one-car garage, we used 12 footers. Cut the rafters to length on a miter saw, then clamp one of the boards to your saw bed so you can create the curved lines for the rafter tails. Use a combination square to mark 2 lines across the end of the board, connect the 2 lines with a paint can, and trace the arc of the can onto the rafter. Use a jigsaw to cut along the line, then sand the shaped edges smooth. Unclamp the rafter and use it as a template to mark the remaining boards and cut their ends in the same way. Next up are the purlins. We made ours 28 inches long to overhang the 24-inch brackets by 4 inches. Measure and mark the purlins and cut them to length on a miter saw. To shape their ends, mark a 45-degree line across the tip of the first purlin. Adjust the blade to 45 degrees and bring the blade down to the mark. Draw a reference line in pencil on the saw bed at the end of the purlin, then cut off the tip. Now, to cut the remaining pieces, just line up the end of each purlin with your line and make the cut. With everything cut, it's time to stain the parts, including the pre-made brackets. Here, I'm finishing the center support. Use an angled sash brush to apply an even coat of solid color stain to all surfaces. This gives the wood a uniform look, almost like paint, but it won't peel. When the stain is dry, apply a second coat and let it cure for the time specified by the manufacturer. Once the stain is cured, you can install the brackets. Start by marking spots for pilot holes. Use a drill with a combination countersink bit to bore a pair of evenly spaced holes near the top and bottom of each bracket. To reach the spots at the top, you may need to use a flexible bit extender. Next, measure the head casing over the garage door and mark the midpoint where you'll install the center support. Run a bead of caulk along the back of the first bracket and press it in place against the door casing. Drill through one of the lower pilot holes and into the casing, then fasten the bracket with a single deck screw, not too tight. Use a level to plumb the bracket, then drill through the 3 remaining pilot holes and fasten the bracket with deck screws. Squeeze a dab of caulk into each of the screw holes and tap in wood plugs to conceal the screw heads. Install the opposite brackets and the center brackets in the same way. With the brackets in place, it's time to assemble the pergola. Start by bunching your rafters together on edge. Mark a line across them 6 inches from each end. That's half the overhang. To space the rafters evenly from the garage to the tip of the brackets, subtract the total thickness of all 3 rafters from the depth of your brackets. Divide that number by 4 spaces, 1 for each side of each rafter. Cut spacer blocks to that length and wedge them between the rafters, then clamp the assembly together. Use cawls under the clamps to protect the stained surfaces. Lay a purlin inside each end line across the rafters. Place the other purlins between them to find a layout you like. We went with 14 purlins, an even number to avoid stacking one directly above the center support. Add up the combined thickness of your purlins, subtract that from the distance between the end lines, and divide by the number of spaces between your purlins. Cut a spacer block to that length, then make a T-shaped block to set the rear overhang for the purlins, the same as the spacing between the rafters. Working from each end towards the center, position the purlins, drill pilot holes, and fasten them to the rafters with deck screws. Get a partner to help you carry the pergola and hoist it in place on the brackets. To center the structure, match the middle of the front joist to the middle of the center bracket. Make sure the rear of each purlin is at least a 1/4 inch off the garage siding. Then clamp the pergola in place and drill angled pilot holes through the rafters into each bracket. Fasten it in place with deck screws. You can plant creeping vines or flowers to cover the pergola, or enjoy it just the way it is. Either way, you can be proud of your work every time you pull up to the garage.